thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Matt Travis. I'm Director of Choral and Orchestral Programs here at the Center for the Arts, and welcome to a super important reminder. If you can all mute your mics, that'll be really helpful as we move forward in order to kind of facilitate the discussion. So please go ahead and mute your mics. If you have any questions, wave your hand aggressively or use the wave hand kind of emoji thingamabobber at the bottom, or you can throw any questions that you might have in the chat to kind of help further our conversation, or any comments, any feedback you'd like to give. We're happy to kind of elevate that, and Jim and Mike are of course happy to take questions sort of as we go. With that, I am delighted to introduce two colleagues, two friends. The first, of course, is Jim Homeyer, who led Music Society and Center Stage Choirs and was music director at the Center for the Arts for just short of 2 decades. So we welcome Jim, my predecessor at the job, actually. So I'm certainly indebted for the mentorship and all that he continues to provide. And of course, our guest host this evening is Micah Young. Micah, the proud product of both Midland High and Interlochen Arts Academy. You may have seen him in numerous Broadway shows, music directing, including White Christmas, also Spring Awakening, and most recently in the national tour of Fun Home. And I will throw his website, and Micah, you could throw your Patreon in there in the chat, so that way we can have access to all your stuff and you can read more about him. As you know, this week, today we'll be talking about 2 completely contrasting but equally wonderful shows, Sweeney Todd and The Music Man. So with that, I will be quiet, and I'm delighted to turn it over to Jim and Micah. Cool. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Matt. I remember the first time I met you, Matt, was backstage at the Center for the Arts, and I think you were still in high school or just maybe in college or something. It was, yeah, it's amazing how the decades go right by you. 2 decades I was there, huh? And look what I have to show for it. A lot of fun. So I'd like to introduce my former sparring buddy in the pit, Micah Young, right? I think you started in, tell us about how you got involved in this. Hey, Micah.
How you doing? It's so good to be here. Yeah, we started, the very first thing we ever did was I was in a mall in the Night Visitors with my father, who's directly below me on the screen. Before my voice changed, I sang that one line in the Servant. I had one line in the whole show, I think. But we started conducting together on Wizard of Oz at TMI, Teenage Musicals Incorporated. And my memory is first day rehearsal, I was all nervous to play piano for you. And I think we played one moment, and then you gave me the baton and said, okay, you get up there and do it. I want to play piano for a while. And I've been conducting ever since. So it's all your fault. Everything I lay at your feet. I'm so grateful to you over the years. Seriously, man, it's been like, you're still very near and dear to my heart.
Well, all I did was push in the pool. You learned how to swim very well, my friend. Yeah.
I swallowed a lot of water.
Yeah. There's still there are a lot of students at the bottom of that pool still, but I'm still trying to pull them up. So with all this sparring, let's continue. The reason we're here is to, I think anyways, I pulled these 2 musicals out of my brain when I was asked to do this, and I really don't know why. But the one thing that I can actually put my finger on is that I've directed Music Man, I've directed Sweeney Todd, and both of the films are so different. And it got me thinking, how come? Why? And so the discussion tonight, I hope, you can add your idea of why the cultures surrounding The Music Man and the cultures surrounding Sweeney Todd are so different, and the productions are so different. And perhaps we can also touch on how is it that we bring a Broadway musical to life on the screen, and what does the director have to do to make it come alive on the screen as opposed to come alive on the stage. So my goal, and I'll read this, generate discussion around the musical attributes used in both movies and how they reflect the cultural values of our times in which they were created, and share enthusiasm for Broadway musicals and how they differ from the movie version. So to start out, I would like to share my screen. I hope this is going to work. So hang on. Technology, just a second. Sarah's iPad entered the room, and I have lost my screen. Stand by. Okay, and we're going to listen to the opening of Music Man when I get there. Stand by. And the story begins. So those are two very, very different expositions, but in both we got a sense of where we were and what the situation was and who the main characters were. And Micah, if you want to talk a little about the musical aspects of this. The reason I asked Micah, A, because I love him to death, and B, he talks a really good game, and C, Micah wrote a wonderful thesis paper when he was at the Manhattan School of Music on this very musical written in 1979 by Stephen Sondheim. So you want to talk about the opening, and then I'll talk a little bit about Music Man and the differences. And after we get done jabbering here, maybe some people could add 2 cents, because I understand this is an open discussion. So let's make it that way.
That's what I heard. Obsession is sort of the theme in Sweeney. I'm obsessed with this show. In college, I did a thematic breakdown of the whole show, and I pulled that paper out how many years later. What's so great about Sweeney Todd is Sondheim takes the content of the story, the murder mystery element, the suspense, and rather than a typical musical opera that has leitmotifs for every character coming out in front and having their themes revealed, the themes are interwoven into underscore, and they're given to us backwards and upside down. We call that inverted or retrograde. But I tried to sum this up in some notes really quick. Sweeney Todd was started in the 1840s by several different writers. It was a penny dreadful, so like a Charles Dickens story, you could pay a penny, get that week's installment of the story. But it wasn't until the 70s when Sondheim went to a production in 1973. He was in London, and Christopher Bond had integrated the story with a Count of Monte Cristo style revenge. And that's what gave the show its legs. That's what gave the story legs for Sondheim. But what I love about this show is he'll take a theme, like, for example, the opening theme of the Dies Irae in the chorus, and he'll turn it upside down, and it becomes My Friends. It becomes a different theme in the show. All the themes get interwoven, and it sounds very erudite. It sounds very lofty, but I just watched this interview where Sondheim said the best thing you can do is write less and reinvent that material more. So you save yourself the agony of having to come up with new material all the time. So what he does is he writes and rewrites those themes into the shows. The other thing that Sweeney Todd does that we didn't get before 1979 was this psychological thriller. He was inspired by Bernard Herrmann, who wrote Psycho and Citizen Kane, the scores of those movies, and he wanted something cinematic. So it made sense to make a movie. And Tim Burton came to him like 20 years before 2007, before the production was put together, and he wanted to make it a movie. The other thing that after watching the movie again, Sondheim was very collaborative about cutting out a lot of the music in the musical, because what he said was he didn't want to make a musical film. He wanted to make a movie based on his musical. So it became an entirely different entity, and it certainly feels like a Tim Burton film. The other thing, I have so many thoughts about this, but I've noticed that both Tim Burton and Sondheim are attracted to the outsiders. If you think about Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, Corpse Bride for Burton, and then you've got, George and Sunday in the Park with George, or The Witch and Into the Woods, or Sweeney. These are characters on the outskirts of society who don't quite fit in. So yeah.
Love it. You mentioned the Dies Irae.
Yes.
Are you at your piano? Because maybe some of us don't remember what the Dies Irae sounds like.
Let me see if I can. I'll walk you over to the piano. Right. So so the Dies
This
Irae.
is
What's that?
this is your studio. This is your studio in New York.
I'm in New York, baby. I'm home at my piano.
Yep.
So you've got this theme. That's the beginning of the Dies Irae, the song for the dead, the day of wrath, day of judgment. It's been used in countless requiems. In Sweeney Todd, you get the and he turned it into a different mode, but he kept that same melodic shape. The same thing in you've got this the song "These Are My Friends," not my vocal range, but you've got that's the Dies Irae. Da, 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 da. So Sondheim, it sounds very lofty, but it's actually just economic writing: reduce, reuse, recycle. These are my friends, see how they glisten. And that theme becomes a whole other song without actually having to rewrite anything.
And what's that other song? It's Pretty Women?
Yes, Pretty Women.
Yeah.
You have the score in front of me, but that theme also shows up. And what I love about Pretty Women is when Mrs. Lovett sings Pretty Poor Thing, it's an inversion of that same melody. So you find that throughout the show, there are themes being worked and reworked, and the identity of the theme tells you about the character.
So that was going into the weeds with Micah Young on the musical attributes of Sweeney Todd.
I wanted to just touch the surface of that.
Yeah, because we could go into the weeds for a couple hours.
Oh,
but
yeah. I can go there if you want.
No. But what I wanted to ask the people is, did we, because whenever we're doing a musical on Broadway, or at the Center for the Arts, one of the first questions we have to ask is, what's the color palette? What are we trying to tell the audience with the unwritten stuff, with the lighting, with the set, with the colors, with all the other stuff that is not in the script? And every director comes at that very, very differently. And I remember times when I think Carol Rumba, when we did, what's the one about ancient times, Camelot or something like that, we put it back in the Druid times. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is the difference between these two movies, I think, reflects the culture that we were in at the time. Now, Micah mentioned that also that Sweeney Todd was sort of based on a real, I don't know if you mentioned it, but it's based on a fable that's not really provable. But there was a Sweeney Todd who had a barbershop on Fleet Street in London. That is fact. But
right.
Whether he would, and there's lots of rumors about people going missing, and that was way back in the 1800s. So this also, The Music Man was based on a real life situation. I don't know if any of you remember a Lion and Healy music company in Chicago that would be selling instruments, and they would have salesmen going around the Midwest starting up bands in communities, and then they go on to another community and start up the band, but nobody knew how to teach the band. Nobody could make a band. But it also helped develop in the United States what we have now as our music programs, because if you look throughout the world, the United States is one of the few countries that has music programs in the curriculum for credit, and the kids can actually go on and get degrees. But in Germany and lots of other places, if you want to study a musical instrument, you have to go outside the school and go to a conservatory, which is not even part of that whole educational structure. So that's The Music Man and the contrast between Sweeney and Todd. So let's open up the microphones if we can, Dr. Matt or Brian, and see if people have things that they notice between those two films. And What was the color palette like? What was the opening? How did that go? And it looks like David King is ready to say something. David,
Am I live? Can you hear me?
yes, you are live.
Excellent.
Our Sweeney Todd from when we did it at the Center for the Arts.
Oh, that was great fun. I think the thing I'd like to compare the two, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think it's wonderful in the beginning how you see in the Music Man. The Music Man, you see the beginning of the film. It's like being on stage. It's like being in the audience, but you got really great special effects with the train moving back and forth. It's a wonderful bit. And I think it plays better in the film what they try to do on the stage to show the guys lurching back and forth there. And so the director uses the fact that he's making a film to accentuate this idea. And it plays, I think, even better on film than it does on stage. When you go to Sweeney Todd, the only thing that they really take advantage of is two things. You get to see the real ship. You get to see the real fog, or at least it looks like that from the audience's point of view. But after that, it's all quite minimal. It's those two characters and very tightly cropped into them. The only time you get the cinematic thing going is when he leaves and goes walking through the street, and you get that fast action thing. After that, it's just the characters carrying the scene, not the special effects, not anything else. And that could be completely reversed, but they chose to do it that way. And I think the difference is to me, amazing. Just because they wanted to, they did. I like it.
Micah.
Yes, sir.
David touched on a couple of things, and you and I had a conversation previous to this about the difference between filming a Broadway musical of the 2007 as opposed to a Broadway musical in 1962 with Shirley Jones. And I do have some more videos to show about Music Man and Sweeney Todd, but let's see where this discussion goes, and perhaps we'll do that later.
Is your questions about the way the films were made?
Oh yeah, the way you and I discussed about the difference between filming a Broadway musical in 1960 as opposed to what Sondheim and Tim Burton did with Sweeney Todd. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it was recently an idea was given to me, although it's easy to think they're your own ideas, being that I was intrigued by the advent of music videos and MTV and VH1 and how back when they actually played music videos on those channels. But you look at like Rob Marshall's Chicago, and I just saw 9 recently, and there are moments, or at least large sections of those movies, that feel to me like music videos. And especially the sort of fantasy element of those productions, like with Chicago, you're allowed to then be very cinematic and immediately take us actually to another place. I also have been trying to figure out, and I haven't gotten a good answer on this, the average shot length of films. It used to be around 12 seconds. I want to say maybe around the time of Music Man or in the 50s or 60s. The average shot length now is about 2.5 seconds, meaning the shot, if you're shooting a scene in a film, the amount of time that you're actually in one shot is averaged at 2.5 seconds. So what does that say about whether it's our attention span or the speed at which we take in information? Or in the case of Music Man in 1962, our culture, if that's the conversation, our culture in 1962 was a lot, some ways it was a lot different than it is now. And maybe we wanted to sit in those moments longer than we do now.
I have a video to share. I'm so glad you said that. Let's go ahead and do it.
I set it up for you. Okay.
You set it up so well. You're great. Oops.
That's what I do.
Talk amongst yourself for a second. I need to, let's see if I can get desktop 2 up here. And, okay, this is not working right. Sorry. Going to start this all over. Well, this is not the one I wanted to share, but I'm going to share it anyways because it kind of leads into what you were talking about. Here comes, I know you have bated breath, all of you. This, as you know, I was on tour with Shirley Jones, and this is a story she
He was
loved
so
to
great.
tell all the
You know,
time.
the actual story is that Frank Sinatra, they wanted Frank Sinatra to do The Music Man because Warner Brothers was producing it. And Frank was a big star, and of course a singer, as we know, and they wanted the name value of Mr. Sinatra on the screen. And Meredith Willson, who wrote the show, The Music Man, came to Warner Brothers and said, "You do not make my movie unless you use Robert Preston." So that's how Preston got the role, you know, and I was thrilled, of course. Much as I love Sinatra, I was eager to work with Preston. And I'd seen him in the show in New York, you know, and he was great. The lovely thing about him, he had been doing the show in New York for, I think, a couple of years. It ran. And when he got on the set, it was like he was doing it for the first time. I mean, it was just, you know, everything was fresh and new and wonderful. He wasn't one of those actors who said, well, we did it this way, you know, we should do it this way. He didn't do any of that. And Morton DaCosta directed it. And Anna White, the choreographer, was our choreographer. And I remember the first day, you know, we rehearsed the numbers ahead of time, all of the numbers ahead of time, weeks ahead of time. And I remember the librarian, Mary and the librarian, the number in the library, you know, where we do all the moves and everything. And we were rehearsing the first day of rehearsal for that number, and Anna was sitting there. And Anna was one of these people that just said it straight out like it is. I mean, she, you know, no holds barred with her, word-wise. So she said, I said, Anna, I said, I just have to tell you, I said, you know, I'm truly, really not a dancer, you know. I'm just not, you know, I wanted to make sure that she didn't expect me to, you know, do a tour jeté or something. And she leaned over in her chair. She said, honey, by the time we finish this movie, you'll be the best damn dancer in Hollywood. And she was right, boys. She was great. She was great. She, you know, she worked with me, and it was wonderful. And I was pregnant with Patrick, and I remember the story is, which is kind of a funny story too. I discovered I was pregnant about 3 months into filming, and it took about 6 to 8 months, to, you know, to film a musical, which is what I told you about Oklahoma. They were all took a long time. I thought, oh, what am I going to do? Because this is my second child, and I had 10-pound babies, so I mean, it was not good. So I took Morton DaCosta to lunch, and I told him that I was pregnant. Well, he nearly fainted, you know, and he said, well, don't worry about it. We'll do everything we can to help you. He said, we'll build a corset. We'll keep pulling you in and pulling you in. And he said, it's a period picture, so we'll add bows and fringe and flounces and whatever to the costumes. And he said, and, you know, if need be toward the end, well, we'll just shoot you from the waist up, you know. He said, but don't tell anybody. I said, okay, I won't, you know. So anyway, he did as he promised, and they kept pulling me in and, you know, kept adding and so forth and so on. And toward the end of the shoot was the one and only screen kiss that we had in the movie, which was the footbridge scene, you know, where we sing the beautiful ballad, Till There Was You, and we have the only screen kiss in the movie. He takes me in his arms and everything. Well, by this time, I truly was very pregnant. I mean, you know, they had me pulled in and everything and kind of covered, but I was pregnant. During the kiss, with our eyes closed, arms around each other, all of a sudden, this big kick happened, you know. And Bob pulled back and he said, what the heck was that? I said, that was Patrick Cassidy. Well, the addendum to this story, you know, Patrick, of course, is a singer and actor now. You know, he's doing, as we speak, he's on the road doing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. But his dream in life was to meet the great Robert Preston. And they just happened to be doing a benefit in New York together. And Patrick went and he knocked on the dressing room door, and Bob opened the door and he said, oh, Mr. Preston, I'm so excited. I'm so happy to meet you. My name is Patrick Cassidy. With that, Bob stepped back 3 steps and he said, I know, we've already met. So that's what happened, you know, with the pregnancy. It was really something.
And with that, the other thing that I noted, I have some more video, but it's 8:10 already. So what I would like to talk about, when you see the color palette of a lot of these early musicals and films of Broadway stuff that we see on the film, it's amazing how the color palette is black and white, or with the colors, they're extreme colors. If you look at the colors that were used in Music Man, or if you see the show, or if you see Camelot, or if you see all of the other shows that came from that period, the basic colors are really delineated, which again, in my mind, gives it a sense of unrealness. Because if you look around you, the colors are not striking. The colors kind of meld into each other. When you go outside in nature, it's not that kind of a color palette is totally different than what you would see on that movie. If you, I don't think I need to play a video to show that, but it's almost as if you're looking at a fantasy world when you're looking at many of the musicals from that period of time. Then you go up into Sweeney Todd, and there's all the colors are darks and grays and blendeds, and there's no striking contrast between one color and another. And that's reality. And that's the reality of revenge, the reality of hate. And that color palette just lends itself to that kind of a story. That's one of the things I noted. Anybody else have comments that, or they want to even talk and say hi to Micah or me or friends on our screen?
Yeah, hi, it's Junior. Can you hear me? Or
I can
Stevie
hear
or
you.
whatever. Thank you
Yes.
to Micah. Thank you to you, Jim. You're a great team, the two of you there. Really enjoy it. On the subject of color, I would say it comes also out of the culture. The earlier musicals were came out of a more optimistic period. And then there started to be a transition to whatever we're calling this period now. But the transition started 20 years ago, whenever it started. So that was my take. Both, yes, it's different, but also there's more optimism. Look at the colors that are popular and decorating now. Gray. It's, it's wondrous to me that that could be a popular color year after year for a few years now. But as we change, or they change the colors for us, it will change. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Junior. That's exactly where I was going with this, how movies today and Broadway reflect not only in the color choices, but the music choices and the content choices and the rhythmic choices, and all those different choices reflect, I think, an opening up of society, of realizing that our little bubble from the perfect American idea is not real. That we live in a complicated society full of all sorts of different colors. And yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. And Beth Cook has her hand up.
Yes, I was just going to say that to me, the color palette in Sweeney Todd goes beyond realism into surrealism, because you're not just entering a realm of realism, you're really entering a nightmare. And so I see the color that way. It's something beyond real to me.
The other point that I was going to make is that they each have a kind of a rap session. The train thing has like a rap session, which was kind of novel, I believe, in those days. But Sweeney Todd also has that rhyming portion that they go in different directions, of course, but it's interesting how they use that medium.
Well, I was going to say that reminds me of Gilbert and Sullivan. Think of Modern Major General, and that's, Sondheim admits to being very influenced by English music, and then of course Sweeney being English. Yeah, that's a great point, though. I love that about Music Man too.
If you'll permit me, I want to share just a quick one from Sweeney Todd that talks about David Cook's comment. Oops, I got to open it up first and get it on the screen. This is, I think, one of Sondheim's finest writings. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Oh, sorry, a little pun there, but from Mrs. Lovett. The other thing I was thinking about, it kind of slipped my mind. There's, well, anyways, to give me time to think about what I was thinking about, would somebody offer something? Micah, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're talking about the culture of these moments, it's 1979 when the musical came out. If I'm not mistaken, the original production had like a beehive image in it, and you think about the upper crust and society and sort of the layers of society. And in that number, they're doing away with all these wrongdoers, all these wrong people, and who doesn't love to see someone like the judge have his comeuppance? I also think, not that I was there, and some of you might remember when Nixon and Watergate happened in '74, it was a moment of loss of innocence. And even with the musical like Chicago in '75, that didn't quite do so well. When they did that revival in '96 during the Clinton scandal, that musical is still running on Broadway. Like 20 years later, it's the longest American musical running on Broadway. Well, it'll be running hopefully someday. But Chicago is another sort of cynically driven wink and a nod to murder that the writers didn't realize how popular it would be given the culture in the late 90s, when we as society became so incredibly more cynical than I think we were in the 50s and 60s with Music Man. And then just one more thing I want to say about this, because I'm fascinated by it, is when 9/11 happened, filmmakers had to rethink how they made films. Franchises like James Bond and the Bourne movies, they had to like rewrite the movie franchises, and we went to a more sense of realism in the way we made films. However, Tim Burton still is Tim Burton. I mean, I'm thinking about his Batman versus, Christopher Nolan's Batman that came after. But Sweeney Todd it's almost like no matter what it is, it's going to be a Tim Burton film. And so with the sense of realism post 9/11, I think there's also escapism. And I think Tim Burton's probably more on someone brought up the surrealism. I think Tim Burton still plays to our needs for escapism, surrealism. Even when it's something scary like revenge, I think we all can relate to that because it's a very deep-rooted human emotion.
Yeah, and it all comes from love or loss of love.
Absolutely, yes. I gotta fix this thing because I was wrong because I love someone. Absolutely.
Right. So the interesting thing too is that in Music Man we have a con man, a confidence man who goes into communities and robs them of their money, leaves them cheap instruments and no way to use to make a band, and he seems to be the protagonist. And here in Sweeney Todd, we have a man intent on killing and actually does kill all sorts of people, and yet that's the leading man. And I've noticed in a lot of films lately since 1990, you know who's the most common villain in most of the films since 1990? The U.S. government. And when you think about the fact that the U.S. government has always got some clandestine operation going that nobody knows about, the black ops. And that seems to be a constant theme through a lot of movies, the Bourne Identity and all that sort of stuff that's come up. And it's amazing how the films that we've been watching have turned upside down. The good becomes on the bottom and the bad is on the top, and we're supposed to identify with the bad guy because the government's after him. Not that Sweeney Todd and Music Man have a lot like that going on, but it's an interesting play on who we supposed to root for here. And the story of Music Man is love conquers all, which is, by the way, the story of every Broadway musical. Most Broadway musical is that love conquers all. And of course, Maid Marian converts the con man into a good guy by marrying him. Pardon me while I throw up, but that just doesn't work in real life. And we finally, and also,
yeah.
Sweeney Todd, the same thing. At the end of the show, he dies, and perhaps that's you could say that that's a fitting end for him. But any other comments? I have lots more that we could do.
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
So,
Matt.
Yeah. Okay. So gun to head, if you had to choose one or the other, We're getting aggressive here. Apologies, but
Wow, Matt.
I know, right? First words of the night. But if you had to choose one or the other, do
Yeah.
you view Sondheim as a great writer of musicals, great writer of books, or great songwriter?
Oh, I'll answer that one.
Well, he doesn't write. He doesn't write the books, though. What do you mean?
I mean, a conceiver of large scale works. I'm thinking specifically, you know, if you look back, many of the shows, well, I love a lot of them, you know, were not commercially successful. But when you think about a lot of the songs, you know, Send in the Clouds, so many people in the world, you know, Not While I'm Around, blah, 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 blah. We kind of go on. So many of the songs are kind of so iconic. So do you view him as a greater composer of the large scale works or the short form song, I guess?
Well, what he speaks to is the reason he doesn't. Oh, you got the book, Jim. You got the book. That's one of my favorites. Now, if you want to get in the weeds, that's the book to get in the weeds with, my friends. Sondheim, in an interview I saw recently, he points to the fact he doesn't really care for opera simply because you can just write long form recitative. The idea of writing concise moments, writing a song, is really challenging. But what he does differently than other composers in musical theater is he'll come up with musical ideas, and like I said, he'll structure an entire large work out of those small ideas. But he still writes. I mean, in Sweeney Todd, we still have songs with song form. So I think he's definitely a master of what he does, which is write large form musicals out of small moments.
I have a quote from Stephen Sondheim. It says, it's one of the reasons why actors like to sing my stuff, because I'm essentially a playwright in song. And I'm not asking them to sing songs. I'm asking them to play scenes. It doesn't matter whether they're in 32 bars or 33 bars or 109 bars or 6 minutes. One of the reasons it convinces you is because psychologically it's true. And I like that description that he uses of himself. He's not a composer. He's a playwright using song as his vehicle. And that is so different than Meredith Willson, Frank Lesser, name some more guys, Lerner and Lowe, Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Irving Berlin.
Almost anybody.
Irving Berlin. George Gershwin. Let's talk about how George and Ira Gershwin did songs. Early Broadway musicals. Don't let me go down this hole. Sorry.
But Jim, you bring up a good point, and Matt too. I think Sweeney Todd is the only musical that was Sondheim's idea first, if I'm not mistaken. But the other thing that Sondheim did to musicals was give it this psychological input that the music is telling this other story. And we have, you know, Rodgers and Hammerstein soliloquies. We have, you know, deep musical moments. But I think Sweeney Todd broke it open in terms of it being about the inner psyche of a character going down this you know, mental state. And I do have to say, thinking back to just any production in New York, any reading I've done, there's a lot of attention paid to that way of thinking about character. Now we think about this dramatic element, and going back and doing you know, Guys and Dolls, we kind of fall prey into making it sometimes more than it is because of our current understanding of musicals, because of moments like Sweeney Todd.
And I think the reason audiences don't warm up to Sondheim, because we found out at the Center for the Arts, if it's a Sondheim show, it's not going to sell well.
Did it not go well?
No, we didn't sell as much as we thought it was going to do, is because you really have to pay attention. You really have to understand what you're watching. And even then, the words go by so quickly, and in an auditorium full of people, sometimes it's hard to understand the words, even with the microphones and that stuff. But I think in the future, Bay City Players is planning on doing Sweeney Todd. Am I right, Stephen Holte?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
And I'll back you on that, Jim. I mean, I've conducted a lot of the, you know, Elijah's and Creation and Messiah and many of the choral masterworks. But the work that I spent the most time studying the score on was Assassins by Stephen Sondheim. And it's just, the level of intricacy is almost unrivaled in much of the music written in the repertoire. I really believe that.
Yeah,
Hey, this is
to get to your point, Jim. Yes, there were going to be auditions in May of last year. Those got COVID quashed. Bay City was going to do Sweeney Todd in July. And thank you for doing this. I just wanted to quickly shout out and say the first time 15 years ago or almost 20 years ago, we did Rocky Horror. You were the music director, and Micah Young was our accompanist as a high school student.
Oh no, the one in 2000. I music directed that one.
That's right.
That was 2000, my friend. That was 21 years ago.
You were just a kid, and you were the rehearsal pianist as well as the music director. Yes, and
you had a blast.
And you had the Dick Wagner band as your backup.
Oh my God! Wow, they were incredible. That was fun.
And loud.
Oh yeah, it's a rock show.
And that was just amazing. And I just wanted to shout out and say, good to see you guys after 21 years.
Good to see you too, Stephen.
So one of the other points I wanted to make too is you heard Shirley Jones say it takes 6 to 8 months to make that movie, and sometimes these Broadway shows rehearse for a year before they get on the boards, and then they have to do out of town tryouts, and they have to do all the stuff before they even hit Broadway. And I just wanted to put a plug in for the Center for the Arts to have that facility in our community so that people can hone their craft and do all that stuff is just, I hope I think a lot of people in Midland kind of take it, for granted because it's always been here. But that's just an amazing, amazing place, and what Matrix is doing and what they're hopefully going to be able to do in the future is just so important for the future of our Broadway musicals and film and everything else.
Well, I gotta jump on that real quick, Jim. I mean, if you weren't there at the time I was going through my paces there, I mean, Midland got me here, and it's thanks to the facilities, the resources, yourself. I mean, I was conducting full company musicals at 15. I mean, who does that? So yeah, no, Midland's special. I hope everything continues on.
I got a few more that I've thrown into the deep end of the pool, so we'll see what happens long after I'm gone, though.
The only way to learn. So I have one more question. This one's actually for Micah. Micah, can you explain to us what Patreon is and how your Patreon works? And you're now accompanied by my daughter B, who's put to bed. So
thank you, Matt. That's very very kind of you. Thank you. Patreon is a wonderful way to support your independent artists like myself. You can go to my Patreon page. I put the link in the chat. I will do it again. And what it is you can subscribe for any amount from a couple bucks to any amount you want. But you receive different benefits, videos of me talking about music, concerts I played, recordings I do, and I give exclusive content to that community. And then also I just engage with them. And if you want to know more about what it's like to be a Broadway musician and artist living in New York, and certainly this year has been, nothing if not eventful.
Cool. Well, happy to do it. So hopefully y'all get a chance to check out both his website and that Patreon page, which is a wonderful resource for so many artists. So, well, thank you so much to our amazing hosts, Jim and Micah, for a wonderful discussion. And thank you to those of you who attended this evening. We'd love to welcome you back to our next Matrix Cinema event, which is on the 14th with Mamiko Reeves, discussing My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and with Jane Palmieri on May 12th with The Social Dilemma. Thanks so much. And Jim and Micah, any kind of parting words for us?
Something like "May the Force be with you." Micah, do you want to sing something from Sweeney?
Yes, I'm gonna go do the whole epiphany now. Bonnie Sitter, when I was 14 years old, gave me my first score of Music Man, and you gave me my first coaching with my brother as Harold Hill. God bless you. Thank you so much. I will be doing more singing and more playing. Check out my Patreon page for more information about that.
Thanks so much. Just Jim plays this out. Have a great night, everybody.
These are my friends. Goodbye, my friends. 26 trombones in the big parade.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like it, love it, share it, tweet it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and join me on Patreon. Patreon.com/MicahYoungMusic. I'll see you there. Bye!